What the Tech is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create a professional website or online portfolio. For a free trial and 20% off, go to squarespace.com and use offer code WhatTheTech9.
What the Tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Zarian, and as always, I'm joined by the world traveler himself, Paul Thurrott, back in beautiful Massachusetts. How you doing, Paul? Good.
I went all the way to New York.
All the way. Big trip. Big trip for you. Yesterday, you were in New York for the Surface 2 event. That they unveiled the Surface 2 here in New York City. Also, a very bizarre time to do an event. It was almost like Microsoft did not check the calendar to see if there's anything happening in New York this week. I don't know, like the UN General Assembly.
Right.
Did you notice any security when you were at Penn Station?
Yeah, so you guys were talking about that at one point, and I was thinking, I hadn't noticed that in the morning, and so when I went back into Penn Station that night, I paid more attention, and yeah, there was a lot of security in there, actually.
I was actually surprised because I didn't see any security. Normally, you see like the cops were like, you know, the assault rifles walking around Penn Station. I didn't see any of those.
They had the camo guys. They had the dogs.
Wow, I didn't see any of it.
Stuff,
well, I wasn't really all that sober yesterday either, so maybe I just totally ignored the fact that there was like martial law happening around me. But yesterday, you were in the city. I showed up. We had a little get together, very small private get together. We didn't do this big public meetup. I kind of wish that we did, but it turned out really good.
Yeah, the problem is that if we had done something big, I would have had to either take the train version of a red-eye home or stayed overnight, which would have been stupid expensive. So
it was a lot of fun, though. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We'll talk about how it went, but let's talk about the event first. You were there, Mary Jo were there. You guys were part of the presentation.
Well, yeah, sort of unofficially.
So what happened? Because I didn't see any of that.
I got there late, so I guess Mary Jo was there early, and they approached her and said, "Hey, if you don't mind, we would like to kind of playfully make fun of you guys." And she said, "Yeah, no problem at all." And so at some point during I thought it was nice of them to ask. I mean, but yeah, they just sort of he made a joke, Panos Panay, about. I think he referred to Mary Jo as his media nemesis. You know, and he said one of the nice things about the Surface, because it's a Windows machine, is it's got BitLocker, it's completely protected. And so, you know, I have the next 3 revisions of our roadmap on here, and if I were to give her my tablet, she wouldn't be able to access it because there's no way to break it.
Crack it. Crack it was the word he used.
Yeah, I don't think he meant physically crack it.
I would have loved to see MJ just take that Surface, just slam it on her knee, and goes, oh, that's not what you meant. You meant actually, okay, now I got it. What did you think of the event? We got the Surface 2. I got some of the specs here that I loaded up in our notes. Not gigantic changes. We're not seeing this huge.
No, I mean, so as you may realize, I had all of the information about the next gen Surfaces before they announced it, and I was really interested to see how they communicated what I had seen, because to me it didn't seem like that big of a deal.
Okay.
And of course, and the one thing I didn't know, the one major thing I was not privy to, was the pricing, because I think that's something they would hold until the last minute, because things fluctuate.
But I mean, we were speculating that the price would have to be lower than what it was initially when the Surface got released at $499, because they just lowered the Surface 1 pricing to $349. So when people go into a store, they're going to see $349. They're going to see $499. That's a big jump.
Yeah. So they're not really doing that.
Okay.
But
no.
Actually, you'll appreciate this, because you'll love it when Apple does it. What they're going to do is keep the existing Surface RT around at $349. They're going to bring the new Surface 2, which is the second-gen Surface RT, out at $449 to start, which is $50 cheaper than the original price. And then they're going to have a Surface Pro 2, which is going to have the exact same price as the Surface Pro did back in, say, January, February when that launched.
Yeah.
Which is $899 and up.
Are you happy with the pricing, or would you have wanted to see
in
it?
fact, I have. So yeah, like I said, I mean, I sort of knew what they were doing. I didn't sort of know. I knew exactly what they were doing, and I was thinking that what I saw on paper was sort of a kind of a modest upgrade, and I was curious how they were going to position this, you know. And so, I among the things that I think they could have done differently, I think I would have done pricing differently, you know. And I wrote an article about pricing and my thoughts on that, and you know, I think that. I understand keeping the existing Surface RT in market because it gives them that $349 option. I have a theory that that device will actually go away quickly because they're going to get a Surface Mini in market, and that device will cost $349, and that will give them that range.
I mean, they're still, I guess, under what the iPad would be, right? $399 and $499 for the iPads, so they're cheaper by $50.
Okay, but that's really artificial. I mean, what is like an iPad 2 today? What does that cost? $399.
$399.
Yeah, so they're undercutting that by about $50. I mean, it's really not much of a value proposition. And a 7-inch or whatever the iPad Mini, whatever that is, 8 inches, is $329 to start. So anyway, that's just a theory, that part of it. But I think that the Intel stuff is too expensive. Some of the peripherals are crazy expensive.
You're talking about the Pro.
Yeah, well, just the peripherals. I mean, you know, some of the and the Pro device is not being. It's funny because they're not any less expensive. They're the same price as the Pro was when it launched. They have 2 more models, and one of them actually costs $1,799.
Oh, I know, it's
crazy.
It's from, and also what I read, you're not getting an i7, are you?
No, the processor is the same, and
it's an i5. Well, it's a Haswell. It's an i5 Haswell now.
Yeah, but it's. Right, but it's the same. You know, the only thing that differentiates these devices across the models is the amount of RAM and the amount of storage.
Yeah, you're getting 4 to 8 gigs of RAM depending on the model. You're getting Intel HD graphics 4400. You get 64, 128, 256, or 512 storage on here. 10-inch. I mean, it's pretty much the same display, also, right?
Yeah, it's the same display. Same size, same resolution. It apparently is some percentage brighter and better color, better color reproduction. I suspect that does make somewhat of a difference. It was hard to tell in the room we were in yesterday, but you know, the Surface Pro screen is great.
To me, the biggest story here would be the battery life on this device. And there were a couple of. I was following The Verge's play-by-play of this event, and Tom Warren was, and I brought this question up when we were having a drink. He quoted the guy, and at one point they said it was 75% better battery life.
Yeah, no, he quoted it incorrectly, which is not really that shocking.
Was that what it was? Okay.
let me get the exact number.
But there were multiple numbers that I was reading.
Right, and I can explain exactly what it was because we were talking about this, I think, before you shut up about the math on this. Actually, 75% is correct. So the Surface Pro 2 offers up to. See, now I'm doubting this. Yes, the Surface Pro 2 offers up to 7 hours of battery life playing video, which is a 75% improvement over the battery life of the original Surface Pro, which was for 4.5 hours. When you add a power cover, the Surface Pro 2 now gets 2.5 times the battery life of the original Surface Pro.
Hold on. So when you add so it's like a 30 milliamp battery on that thing, right? It's like a tiny little battery on that Surface cover?
Yep. Now, what that means, if we accept the previous numbers as correct, that's 13 hours of battery life. Now,
on top of the 7,
just 13. I actually believe that that's incorrect. I suspect it's going to be a little bit north of 10 hours based on just doing math on real world versus what they said.
But you're talking about 10 hours in real world usage.
Battery life. Yeah.
Well, that's impressive. That's not bad at all.
No, it's not bad at all.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you're doing far more than you would with an iPad too. I mean, what's the iPad? 10 to 12 hours of real world usage, but
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, this thing's a PC. I mean, it's interesting to me that these two devices have exactly the same form factor. I mean, they're not the same dimensions. I mean, one is, the Pro is obviously heavier and thicker and all that, but they're the same thing, right? Same screen. They clip onto the same keyboards and all that stuff. The Surface 2 is what Panos Panay called a personal tablet. It's what the industry calls a media tablet, a consumption device primarily. But it's one that has this option for doing productivity because it's a Microsoft Advantage. You get the full version of Office on there. It's a pretty cool thing to have if you want it. The Surface Pro 2, which is, of course, the same device, with Intel internals, runs Windows 8.1, not Windows RT. And they're positioning this as like a new kind of a laptop or an Ultrabook, even though it's really a tablet, right? Because in their view, the Surface 2 or the Surface RT is something that's a tablet primarily, but could be a productivity type machine if you want it to be. Whereas the Pro version is an Ultrabook or a laptop, but you can take off the keyboard and it could be a tablet occasionally if you want it to be. It's kind of an interesting differentiation. So what I've heard, I didn't hear this from them specifically, but from other sources, is that the marketing for this is going to be very different than the first gen marketing, and that they're going to play down the iPad comparisons because they don't want people to always be comparing this to the iPad. They want people to think of it as a new kind of a device.
Which it is. I mean, are people, and
it is, but
I've said this question many times, are people that are going into a store, looking at an iPad and looking at a Surface and saying, okay, these two, I got to pick one. I don't know if that's the case.
No, and I have a bigger problem with this. I mean, unfortunately, so I thought it was a good presentation. I thought they did some interesting things. We can talk about the specific updates, which, many of which are very good and all that. Ultimately, however, what we've got is this kind of strange device set of devices that both are very much modeled on the iPad. They're the same size screen. It's like it never occurred to these people that pros, meaning the types of people who would need the Pro device, videographer, video makers, photographers, developers, professionals of any kind, people like me who are writers, would be okay with a tiny screen like this. It's really strange. I don't think the market for that kind of device as an Ultrabook even exists. In the PC world, 11-inch Ultrabooks are toys. They're the types of things you give to a student who's a child, or, they're not. If you've ever used an 11-inch MacBook Air,
it's
that
really small.
It's beautiful and light, and it's too small.
Well, I was just saying that right before we started the show, before I called you. I have a 13.5-inch MacBook Pro, and I love the size because I could take this thing with me, and it's still it's a compact, and I can still travel with it.
It gives you a full-size keyboard.
It gives me a full-size
bigger screen that you can actually see, and it's still super portable.
But there are times, because I've become such a power user on this thing, I'm thinking, well, I should have gotten a 15-inch because I'm out of screen real estate. I mean, it's everything, nothing fits anymore on the screen for me.
Right.
So I can't imagine what it would be like for someone that's doing some video editing or doing any kind of like heavy
I think that's a ludicrous use for this machine. And they talked about that, and I get it, but I just, I happen to use a 15-inch Ultrabook, which is a somewhat rare kind of machine. There are really only 2 or 3 of them from all of the PC makers combined. And I'm not suggesting this should have been a 15-inch machine, but I think the planet has basically settled around 13 inches for that kind of machine, 14 in some cases. That would have been a more appropriate size for the Pro device.
I mean, it kind of makes sense with that they would have had, they have the Surface, which let's forget about RT, right? Let's just say the Surface, you go with an Intel chip on this thing, you still have the small screen, and then the Pro version, you got a 13-inch screen on it.
Yeah. Now, obviously, they have reasons for doing what they did, and one of the things you get when you have one form factor essentially is you get these accessories that all work together. The power, all the covers, the type covers, the touch covers, power cover, all of those things work on both, and they work across the generations of the machines for the most part. It's not perfect. I mean, the Pro has mini display port out instead of the proprietary video out that the Surface 2 uses in RT, but I mean, I get it, but I just think it limits the market too much. I would rather have seen, a Bay Trail type tablet, 10.6 inches, and then have the core version, the Haswell version, be like a 13-inch machine.
I mean, it is a nice looking piece of hardware.
I know, and I want it. I want to use this machine. It's just too small. I mean, I wish it was a little bigger. I would make the concession on the 15-inch screen size to get this, beautiful build quality and be able to carry this kind of thing around.
Yeah.
It's too bad.
I don't know. To me, I feel like what they got to do is I love the fact, first of all, I think it's a good idea that they dropped that RT thing from the Surface brand. It's no longer Surface RT, just Surface.
Yeah. By the way, I'm gonna go back and watch this again, and I'm gonna look at the transcript if it ever becomes available. But I took a lot of notes during the talk, and I have to say, I found there's a little bit of subterfuge though that goes on when they say it. In fact, let me see if I can find it in my notes, because he didn't really say Windows RT to my memory at all. And when he talked about Surface 2, he talked about how it had Windows 8.1 on it and how that made such a big difference. And I was like, that's kind of interesting because it's Windows RT 8.1,
Yeah.
And yeah, so what he said, this is my notes, so it's sort of truncated, but he said, a year ago we launched this with Windows 8. Today we have Windows 8.1. The power of Windows 8.1 comes to life in full on this product. You can split the screen, have 3 apps at once, which, by the way, actually you can't do on that screen. So I'm curious about that one. You can be productive, blah, blah, blah. But he never said RT, at least not that I heard. And so it's almost like they're trying to just push the fact that this thing is, it's Windows 8.1. It is the ARM version, the RT version, but it's Windows 8.1.
But you can't run desktop apps.
No, you can't run Windows apps. Well,
you can't run any. It's nothing like Windows. I want to continue that discussion actually and talk about are they going to do anything to kind of separate the two? Because I still feel, and this was a discussion we were having in a chat before the show.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, guys, if you don't watch the show live, tune in live once in a while because we have these discussions prior to the show, and it kind of adds to what we're doing now because I could kind of reference the stuff. But someone said, I brought up the fact that I think a lot of people still go into a store, they're buying this thing, and they have no idea that they can't run Windows apps on here. Windows applications. It's only Metro and whatever you're getting, currently on desktop. Someone in the chat said, no, I think people know really what they're buying. They walk into a store, they know exactly what they're buying, and they're buying it. So I kind of want to discuss that a little bit and to kind of speculate on what they're going to do and how they're going to separate the two, because I still feel that they need to separate these two products, and they need to kind of explain to people, hey, this isn't really Windows. It's Windows, but it's not really Windows. But it is Windows.
It's the new Windows. It's
the new Windows.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that a little. But before we do, guys, we need to take a little break and talk about our sponsor, and that's Squarespace, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality blog, portfolio, personal website, and even e-commerce. This is why I really like Squarespace. You could pretty much create any kind of website that you want, and they do a lot of the work for you. They do the SEO stuff for you, so it ensures that your website is being crawled by Yahoo, Bing, and Google. They also do your hosting and your domain name, so you don't have different companies to kind of deal with. And here's the great thing. They're offering a free trial with no credit card required. You can start building a website by going to squarespace.com and using offer code WhatTheTech9. When you use offer code WhatTheTech9, you get 20% off your purchase. And it actually helps us out and shows that you're supporting What the Tech and you're supporting the show. But I've been talking about this for a while. When I don't want to build somebody a website and I want the person to do it themselves, I always recommend Squarespace for them. Personal blogs, a lot of people are doing that, and it is such a headache for a lot of people. They don't understand. They got to buy a host. They got to buy a domain. My neighbor is building actually, this is fascinating for the women in our audience. She does pocketbook repair. She buys these very expensive, high-quality pocketbooks on eBay, and she ends up repairing them. And her business has grown tremendously, and she has no website. So I just sent her to Squarespace, and she's building out a Squarespace site all on her own. This is someone that has never built a website out, and it actually looks pretty impressive. It's a really nice designed website. So it just shows you people that don't have any experience could build a website with this service with Squarespace. What the Tech 9 is the offer code. You get 20% off when you sign up, and I want to thank Squarespace for supporting What the Tech and the GFK Network. So, Paul, let's talk about Surface and Surface Pro. Surface 2 and Surface Pro 2.
Okay.
Or the Surface 2 Pro. Surface 2 Pro.
Wait, what?
I walk into a store now, right? I go into Best Buy or I go into wherever. Are they explaining to people that, hey, listen, if you want to run Windows applications, you have to buy the Pro model?
I hope so.
Has Microsoft addressed that? Like, has that been an issue for them?
I wonder, the selling point on the Pro is pretty obvious to me, right? It's a Windows laptop.
Yeah, it's a Windows laptop.
It comes in this cool kind of form factor.
But they do a very good job at explaining that. That they're doing a really good job because I know exactly what it is when I see the ads and I see them talking about it.
But the RT one's a little squishier, isn't it? Here's this thing that looks like Windows 8. It is Windows 8, we know, but I mean, it looks like the Windows 8 that can run, desktop apps, but it's not. It does come with a free version of Office, right? So some people will hear that and go, oh, yeah, that's interesting. It is significantly less expensive than the Pro version, and it gets great battery life. It already did. The new version performs much better than the original RT device, and I find myself curiously interested in this device, although, despite having spent the past year explaining to people that they don't want to buy one of these things.
Yeah.
But the trade-off is you can't run those desktop apps. It's not necessarily compatible, or at least completely compatible, with a lot of the devices you may have, depending on what those things are. It's kind of interesting. And people think they can get along without that stuff, but there's always something. I was talking to a guy yesterday who was talking about plugins, for a web browser. I want to use LastPass. Okay, you can't use that on Windows RT.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. And then applications, of course. iTunes is not going to work ever. Google Chrome does not work. Probably never will. In fact, as of today, I believe there are no other web browsers. You're stuck with IE. Those kinds of things add up. And when I look at my own daily workflow, it's really interesting because the number of applications that I install in Windows has gone downhill over time. But on my desktop right now, I can see things that I can't run on RT, including Chrome and Adobe Photoshop, Windows Photo Gallery, which is a Microsoft product, Visual Studio, obviously, which is a development tool. That's sort of an esoteric thing. And then there are applications that, there are alternatives or Metro versions of, but I really prefer the desktop versions. Skype, Metro Twit, which is the Twitter client that I use, and even like video playback. I prefer things like I use VLC, for example, to play videos on my own computers, but not, it does not exist on Windows RT. And even if it did, it would be, this kind of full screen Metro experience, which I actually in a video player maybe is not so horrible, but there's a few things already. And, for work-related stuff, I use Word and OneNote. They do work over there, but I use Photoshop every day. And I get that there are photo editors in Windows RT or in Windows Store apps, but they're not as sophisticated as what I need. They don't provide, those apps are all about remove red eye and, crop it to a certain dimension or something, which is nice, but I need something more than that because I do something very specific for work. So it's just not there. I mean, it
won't be there for a while. I don't think it's going to be there for at least another version.
Well, I mean, imagine a trip like I went on yesterday, where it's just a day trip or an overnight trip. If these solutions were there or something was there that would work, you can bring this thing that gets like 12 hours of battery life. I probably could, I could bring a smaller bag. I could bring less stuff. I could probably get away without bringing the power supply. And then I could go and do my stuff, and I'd be carrying something that was way lighter than what I normally carry.
But could you have done? Because I saw you working yesterday when we got to the bar, you were actually making a blog post. Could you have done that on the Surface? Yeah,
but it would have been uncomfortable.
Okay, uncomfortable because you're not used to it, or because it's just the way that
I've done it. No, I mean I do. The computer I'm using right now is a Surface Pro, right? The thing we're using to communicate with right now is a Surface Pro, but I'm using it on a big screen and at my desktop, and I have my big keyboard and all that. When we went to Europe, I brought the Surface Pro, and I used it on trains and out in the world and everything, and it's okay for a little while. I find the keyboard to be very cramped. The screen is tiny. You have to blow up the display, what do you call it? The display scaling, so you can see everything, and it kind of destroys the point of having a high resolution screen because once you bump it up to like 125 or 150%, the effective resolution gets closer to 1366 by 768 or whatever it is. It's just too small.
Someone in our chat said, why do we hear this complaint that you can't run Windows desktop applications on the Surface? You don't hear that about the iPad, and of course you don't, because the iPad is not called, the MacBook MacBook screen running, OS 10 mobile.
Right. Exactly.
It's pretty confusing.
Yeah,
when
that's part of the psychology of it. Yeah, no doubt.
If it was just called Surface and had nothing to do with Windows, nobody would be complaining about it, because it's something else.
I do think we're going to get to the point, and it will happen first in Windows RT, where this thing, whatever, they can't call it Metro, but let's just pretend they could call it Metro. This thing will be known. It's Metro. It's not really Windows, right? I mean, they're going to have to call it Windows, but it's Metro. And there's a desktop on there for backwards compatibility purposes, because no one would buy this if they couldn't run Office on it or whatever. So we'll give you Office, and Office requires the desktop, and there are other things that require the desktop, especially in the first version of Windows RT. But I think eventually that stuff goes away, and you're going to have this desktopless Metro device. And then if you think about Windows, the real Windows, the version where you can run those apps, that becomes like Windows plus Metro, because it really is going to be both. You're going to have the desktop, and then you're going to have this other thing. It's just at that awkward, teenager stage where it's not quite a child and it's not quite a man,
the hardware is nice.
Yeah.
But am I going to go and buy one now? That's the question. And last year I had said, well, when the Surface 2 comes out, this will be the device that I would probably want. The Surface 2 is here, and I really don't want it.
I wonder if you had seen one, if you would feel a little differently. When I was looking at pictures of this thing ahead of time, I didn't think that the form factors had changed at all. And in the case of the Pro, they haven't. But in the case of the RT, which, by the way, was already very thin, very light, and got great battery life, it's thinner and it's lighter. It has this kind of new, they're calling it a natural magnesium color, meaning it's kind of a dull gray. I thought it was white in the pictures, but it's actually kind of a light silver or a light gray color. It's funny. It has the feel of like polycarbonate, like a nice thick plastic, not like a plastic Samsung, cheap plastic, but
like an Apple plastic.
Yes, well, I was like a Lumia plastic. Like something really high quality and well made. It really does feel nice. And again, I'm not going to use it for a primary workstation kind of thing, but the game picture gets a little bit better if the entertainment app thing gets a little bit better. Not a bad secondary device.
Yeah.
And the performance was better. I mean, we're going to get to review these things soon, and I'm very curious to see this real world. I'll certainly be comparing it to Windows RT. The original version, Surface RT. But I they might have solved that problem.
Was there any big surprises that came out at all? Like something that you were like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. Nothing. Everything was expected.
Well, I had it all. I mean, I already,
And the camera, the cameras on these things, did they upgrade those?
There's some confusion there. So in their official documentation, the Surface Pro has what they call a 720p what do they call life camera of some kind. In the specs for the Surface 2, which is the lower end device, it says that it can shoot 1080p video. So I don't know what to say to that. It also says that the lower end Surface 2 supports Dolby sound stereo speakers. The Surface Pro doesn't mention Dolby.
Interesting.
In fact, it also mentions that the Surface 2 has some kind of noise canceling capabilities in the microphones. The Surface Pro only has one microphone, not two, and it doesn't say anything about noise cancellation. So there are some curious spots where it appears that Surface 2 has some better specs than Surface Pro 2, but that might just be an omission of the specifications we've gotten. So we'll have to look at that when we actually get the devices.
So I got a question for you on Twitter. Somebody asked this question, and I thought it was interesting. Do you think that the Surface Remix Blade could be used as a viable podcast recorder / soundboard?
I guess. Do you think? I thought that was kind of hokey. I mean, when they launched the original Surface, they were talking about this capability they had to kind of extend the devices with these blades. And the type cover, the touch cover were kind of the first blades that they were going to release. And they said they would have more. And the power cover is another new blade. And there's some confusion about whether that cover you're talking about is in fact a standalone cover, or if it's some kind of a sheath that goes on top of the new type cover 2.
Okay.
Right, because one of the things they changed between the generations of type and touch covers is that the number of sensors that's inside of there has gone up exponentially. And I mean that fairly literally. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it went from 80 to 1,092 or something, like some crazy number of sensors. And so I guess on the original touch covers, it was fairly easy to mistakenly hit between keys, and you wouldn't hit a sensor, so it wouldn't register a keystroke. And so in this one, because there's so many sensors, it can see where you are between the keys, determine that maybe you're a little closer to, say, the G key than the T key, and you must have meant to hit G if you're on that key, and so it's much more sensitive to that kind of thing.
Have we seen them like third-party touch covers come out?
No, I don't think to date they've enabled that capability. But once they started showing these covers that they're thinking about making, it raises the possibility that they would license that out for people to do, and they would be crazy not to. I think that's one of those sky's the limit type of things. But,
yeah,
that particular thing, the boombox thing, that's cute, and the 17 people that love to play with GarageBand would love that kind of thing. But I just don't see that as like a mass market need.
What I do think, though, I do think that this could be a good selling point for companies that want to sell. You have a Metro app, obviously, for RT, and then you have a touch cover that goes along with it, and that touch cover will work specifically with that application for whatever need you have, like DJs, for example, podcasters, for example. I mean, even like let's say there was a Wacom, touch pad that was made for drawing or whatever it is. Yeah, what you're doing with that. I think that would be a nice little niche.
Okay, and that was one they actually talked about, where they sort of alluded to this notion you were finger painting with fresh paint, and as you press down harder on the surface of that thing, whatever the blade would be, it would have that effect, because it is pressure sensitive as well, in a very fine grained way. So that's sure. But again, that's not a huge market. I mean, I think some people would love that. In the same way that they would use a Wacom tablet or whatever. But I don't know. To me, I see more fundamental issues. I'd rather see a bigger device. I'd rather see lower prices.
I'd rather see a lot of things happen at this point with them. Yeah. Yesterday, we also got news that pretty much BlackBerry's done. They're finished. You posted today that they have accepted the $4.7 billion buyout. Mm-hmm. And now we are going to slowly see them get cut apart into many, many pieces.
Well, we'll see. So we actually don't know what's going to happen, but the basic gist there is that there's a 6-week process where the company the consortium that wants to buy them will do due diligence on the business of BlackBerry and see if they think they're getting what they think they're getting, and they could back out. They
could back out, or they could give them a lesser offer as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Someone else could make a better offer, and if they accept another offer, they would just have to pay a small termination fee. I mean, and by small, I mean like $157 million. But in the scope of the billions of dollars that they're getting, and presumably an offer they would accept would be more than $157 million more. They could do that.
I have a couple issues with this. Mm-hmm. And one was that over the weekend, I guess we got news that they were leaving the consumer market and concentrating on enterprise, right? What have they been doing this entire time? I never saw them as a consumer company. Their primary focus was always enterprise. That's where the majority of their sales came from, majority of their revenue came from. So this announcement that they're leaving consumer, I thought it was like a non-event. I was like, oh, okay.
Were they even a consumer?
I had no idea they were a consumer product.
When they launched the BlackBerry 10, they had Alicia Keys on there. They talked a lot about the music software and, that kind of entertainment services stuff. Like Microsoft, I think they saw where the real growth was occurring in the personal computing space, and it was coming from individuals, not from companies.
Yeah.
Which tend to go much more slowly. And they want a part of that. I get it. I mean, like Microsoft, I don't really think they have that kind of cachet,
But
although
what do you
I
do
would
with
say
them?
worse than Microsoft. Actually, Microsoft has a much better consumer portfolio than they do.
I mean, I'm a little confused with the story, so maybe you could help me out with this. But the story was saying, like, oh, instead of putting out 6 devices a year, they're going to put out only 4 devices a year. And
well, okay, yeah.
But what are they now? Now that this buyout will probably happen, let's assume that it's happening.
Yeah, I would think so.
Is this company still going to continue selling hardware?
See, no, we don't know. So that's the question. No one's saying, and they wouldn't say. So the theory here is I don't think they're going to. I actually don't believe they're going to continue it as an ongoing concern. I would imagine that what they're going to do is retain the patent portfolio, which is worth some billions of dollars, and license that and have an ongoing source of revenue. And that to make up the difference in the sale, they'll sell off the rest of the company. The company must have manufacturing facilities. They must have, whatever the handset business is, the actual, the software, and that it's possible Microsoft might even own a part of that when that comes down to it. People have Microsoft could offer them $5 billion and just take it away from this other company. Yeah, or they could pay $2 billion to get the part they want.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
I mean, other than patents, what would the benefit be for a Microsoft to buy BlackBerry? I guess the enterprise, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know what they could do. I mean, I think that's a fantasy for a lot of people. Like, oh no, Microsoft is going to come in and grab BBM and that's it. But what are they going to do with them?
Yeah, BBM would be another thing that would sell off. Why would anyone want BBM? I mean, Microsoft could buy it and integrate whatever the good part of that technology is into their into Skype probably. Yeah. And then they would also hopefully get those customers. Some percentage of the customers would just leave on that service, obviously, but some percentage might migrate over and they could retain them. And then the usage base of Skype, which is like 300 million, could go up by whatever number. And there are advantages there.
To me, I mean, when HP bought Palm, I saw more hope for WebOS surviving than I do for BlackBerry, 10. I mean,
I would say the same hope.
I think less. I think who's going to use that operating system at this point? The market is so different.
I think we talked about this yesterday.
I don't remember a lot from yesterday, Paul.
Okay, so let me fill you in. Okay. I think we did talk about this. BlackBerry 10 looked great. But when they announced it, I had this idea that this was like dead company walking. That as much of a risk as it was to go after, say, something like Windows Phone, I at least knew that this company had billions and billions and billions of dollars. And because the smartphone was so important to their success going forward, that they would keep pushing forward even if they were failing. Whereas BlackBerry just doesn't have that capability. And I was really afraid for them, have been for some time now. And it really doesn't matter how good it is because it's just never going anywhere. And as bad as everyone thinks the App Store is on Windows Phone, the App Store on BlackBerry is a joke on BlackBerry 10. So this is just not a system.
And let me just say, very disappointing because I'm a fan of the product. I like the
phones
Z10.
are beautiful. The OS looks beautiful. But it's the reaction we all should have had to WebOS. It's the reaction we should have had to BOS. It's the reaction we should have had to the Amiga. It's just the same thing. It's just stuff that was better, but it didn't matter.
I feel like this has been like this company's been in a coma, and we've just been like staring at it slowly. Like every now and then we're like
Twitch.
Yeah, that's what we've been doing this entire time, and now we're like, okay, we've realized that this is not changing. There's nothing
been there for a long time. Yeah.
You know what could possibly happen? An HTC comes along and they say, we want the software, we want to run this operating system, screw Android, and now they're offering something different.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. So
I feel like there's going to be.
It's telling though that hasn't happened. I mean, that could happen, right? That's something that could happen.
That's something. But I feel that there's 2 paths that these companies, non-Samsung Android developers, could take. Right. Samsung is the big one. Moto obviously is going to stick with Google because it's Google. But a company like HTC, which just put out this beautiful phone, who knows about the specs and everything else. Forget about that. But it's a beautiful phone. It got some traction. It got some market share. People loved it. What's going to happen to them in the next couple of years? They're not going to be able to produce these like mega phones that people get a big pop over because it's all about Samsung. Samsung controls that market.
Well, I don't know. I mean, okay. So just two things. I would say Google makes these Google sells these Nexus devices that are made by someone else. So far, they've been Asus and LG, I think, and I think even Samsung made one of them.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason HTC couldn't get into that mix and be, how awesome would the Nexus 4 have been if it was an HTC One X or something,
But why would they do that? I don't understand why Google would when they have Motorola.
Because that's what they do. I think they're going to still do that.
I think it's bonkers.
Okay, but I'm not defending it. I'm just saying I think
stop defending them. I know you're.
Yeah, I just love Google so much. I think that HTC could, let's say Fairfax buys BlackBerry and they divide it up and they keep the patents, and maybe HTC swoops in and says, hey, for $1 or $2 billion, we're going to buy the BlackBerry OS and the handset business, and we're going to do this as our second OS, just like Samsung is developing something all on their own. And someday Samsung or HTC goes out of business, and then people are going to point back to that and say, oh, see, that's where they went south. They were doing, were doing bad, but then they bought this and it divided their time. And that's really not what's wrong with HTC, right? I just don't think that BlackBerry is going to matter to what happens to HTC. I think that it's a good idea for one of those companies to buy that if it's possible, but I don't think that that's what's wrong.
I think the Android marketplace right now, to me, I see like that bubble's about to burst, not because Android is not a good operating system or people don't want it, but the fact that there are so many Android phones on the market and nothing is standing out beyond maybe what Samsung is putting out. Everything else kind of falls into this little weird mix-up of Android phones that are $100. I feel like what HTC will have to do or what an LG will have to do is take the Amazon approach and start, just take the core Android functionality and just build on top of that and make something totally different. Don't even call it Android.
That is such an effort. I mean, it's unclear if a company like LG or HTC has the resources or just the wherewithal to do that. I'm not even sure that's possible.
You think
to have that be successful? I mean, to have it be anything other than ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean that's why I feel like Amazon has been so successful in this Android tablet. I mean, I'll put them with Android because it is Android, but they're successful because they've done something different. What would the Amazon Kindle? What would the Kindle Fire would have been? What would have been if it was just another Android tablet, just running gingerbread, right. And you had the Amazon bookstore on there. Like it was just one Amazon button and that was it. It wouldn't have stood out. And I feel that's the problem in this market. And when you're BlackBerry and you create this beautiful operating system, it's a shame to see it go. And I said the same thing for WebOS. It was a shame.
It's going though. I mean, look, this kind of consolidation is natural. It's the way these markets evolve. I mean, I'm not saying it's not too bad. I mean, I occasionally have run into people on Twitter who, are really upset. I've written some negative things about BlackBerry because they're a terrible, terrible company and have been mismanaged for a really long time. And they get really emotional about it. And they're like, this is like the Amiga for me. And to me, it's like, yeah, it's not really, it's not like the Amiga. It's BlackBerry. They made, secure productivity devices for governments and businesses. I mean, who cares? It's not an emotional thing. But they made they made mistakes and they moved too slow. And again, I can only draw comparisons to Windows Phone because Windows Phone, for all of its problems, has a thriving app marketplace that is way better than what BlackBerry has. Thriving entertainment ecosystem, way better than what BlackBerry has. Outsells BlackBerry by a very wide margin. Is doing quite well compared to BlackBerry. So Microsoft moved slow, I guess, but compared to BlackBerry, they moved with lightning speed. So whatever.
How do you think they would have done? How do you think BlackBerry would have done if they had not gone with QNX and just said, okay, we're going to take Android and we're going to kind of work Android a little bit? Maybe that might have
sure.
given them a lifeline.
But that's the Nokia question. I don't know.
Yeah.
How good would Windows Phone have been if it was running Android? What if Windows Phone was Android? And it just had that Windows Phone look and feel, but it could run Android apps. How awesome would that have been? I don't know. I don't know.
I don't think
they weren't. They'll never do that. So I can't really. I don't know.
It's just a shame. It's a shame to see it go away. Yeah. So goodbye to BlackBerry. It was a slow death, but I can't say it wasn't deserved at this point.
It was, like Netscape, kind of a combination of self-inflicted wounds. And, this is what happens when you poke a bear. Sometimes it lashes out at you. We
also got information yesterday that Apple sold 9 million iPhones in 3 days. The best launch day ever for them. Mm-hmm. What did you make of the numbers? I mean, I think it was like 3 million and 4 million. It was something like the breakdown was weird of what sold and how many of them sold. But
first of all, the most interesting story about this Apple thing is that people are trying to debunk it, which I find to be very funny. That's never happened before. We always accept what Apple gives us at face value. This is the first time ever where people have tried to poke holes in this, that they didn't really sell that many, and here's why, and blah, blah, blah. So the two things I would say to that are, first of all, for the first time ever, they sold 2 devices. And for the first time ever, they launched this thing simultaneously everywhere, including China, which is the single biggest smartphone market in the world. And so the fact that they were almost able to double first weekend sales over a year ago, no problem. I have no problem with that. Like, that's not surprising. I'm not putting cold water on it. I think it's fine. I'm just saying, there you go. That sort of explains that. And by the way, Apple once again is able to come out with some fairly middling upgrades here, and still attract lines of people around the block and all that kind of stuff. So, okay, obviously they're still very popular in certain places.
And everybody wants a gold one. The gold has sold out.
It looks better in real life than it sounds. But the second one is, and just to retort to these people, because I've been making the same argument on the Microsoft side for a long, long time. You'll say, things would happen in the past where, I don't know, like Microsoft sold 100 million licenses of Windows 8, as of May of this year. People will say, well, that's not like there are 100 million people using it. Those are licenses sold. That's not the same thing. When Apple sells products, they sell them directly to people. That means actual people are using them. So if Apple says 100 million or something, that there are 100 million people using them. And my retort to that is always the same, because it's the truth, which is that as far as the company is concerned, a sale is a sale.
Yeah.
And so if you're getting X amount of dollars back when you sell something, you get that money back, or you get that money when you sell it. So in Microsoft's case, their primary business, the primary way that they distributed Windows in the past was to sell Windows to PC makers, who would then put it on their PCs, put them out in the channel, and hope that they sell. It doesn't matter if they ever sell. They could all be returned. Microsoft was paid for those copies of Windows. If the PC, now people will say that's baloney, they go back and it's not baloney. If those PCs don't sell, if somehow HP gets them all back, HP doesn't keep buying copies of Windows. They hold on to them. It's a sale. It's still a sale. It will impact things down the road. And so ultimately these things, by and large, are going to end users. But that's not the point. A sale is a sale. But what has happened with the iPhone this time is that people are actually writing articles where they're saying a lot of these sales are not sales. They're sales into the channel being for Apple wireless carriers, because that's who sells Apple's products. Apple doesn't sell them.
Okay.
Apple sells some of them. But
do people actually think like you're going into a store and there's like boxes of iPhones just sitting there, and is that what they're assuming? Or
no, but a lot of them are in transit. In other words, Apple says, hey, the iPhone, we opened the doors on Friday morning at 9 a.m. and we started selling iPhones. And then as of Monday morning, we sold 9 million of them. People are saying, well, yeah, except that the places where the doors open and people went and bought them, they only sold about 5 million of them. The other 4 million are on trucks heading to those stores, or heading to distribution centers, or heading to wherever they go. Yeah. And then they're going to those stores. And maybe those will actually end up in users' hands this week or next week or whenever that happens. Guys, you know what? I'm sorry. Fair is fair. A sale is always a sale. It doesn't matter if we're talking about Microsoft or Apple. Apple sold 9 million iPhones. The people who can't handle that need to deal with it.
And that's
that's just a fact.
It's a tremendous number. Tremendous.
It's a very big number.
I mean, when you're talking about, I forgot what phone it was that came out, and they were saying like, well, it was pretty impressive. They sold 250,000 phones, and I think I forgot what it was. God, it was like a year ago, and they were talking about like, oh, they sold anywhere from 100,000 to 250,000 phones, and they were talking like, oh wow, well, you know what? That's impressive for this phone. Apple sold 9 million.
I know.
And this was a phone.
No. There's no negativity you can attach to this. Well, except for the fact that I think that these phones are not particularly impressive. I mean, it's depressing to me that people stand in line for this. I mean, that's sad, but that's just my opinion.
They
that
did.
Doesn't matter.
People were wrapped around the line.
They sold 9 million of these things. In the previous quarter, Nokia sold 7.4 million Lumia handsets. It was its best quarter ever for Lumia. It took them 3 months to sell 7.4 million of something. And by the way, it wasn't 2 somethings. It was like 9 somethings or however many models they have. Apple sold, I mean, pretty middling upgrades, pretty evolutionary nothings. A cheaper version of last year's phone and a gold version of, I don't know, whatever these things are. And they sold 9 million of them in 3 days.
Listen,
I'm sorry. That's amazing.
I think a lot of people have, and a lot of people like to pick a side, and I think a lot of people like to pick, especially with Android and iOS at this point, which is crazy when you compare the two, because honestly, I don't feel that that's an equal comparison. But when you're talking about market saturation, when you're talking about Android has 60-something% of the market, and they sold this many Android devices, I want to know on launch day, how many Samsung S4s were sold?
Right.
I can guarantee you it is nowhere near the 9 million or 5 million.
No, of course not. But here's the thing. So, they're look, if you want to print a negative story about Apple, you could print this story. This would be interesting to look at. Show a graph over the course of a year, and you show what the sales of iPhone look like over the course of the year. And in September, October, or whatever it is they do the launch, they have this gigantic leap, and then it goes down, and then it probably levels off at some really low level, and then the next giant leap happens. Whereas the Samsung picture, which is higher up across the board because they sell more phones, is more of a like a Homer Simpson hairdo kind of thing,
like
because they launch devices throughout the year, and they get little bumps. The biggest phone release that they would have had this year, probably the S4, was nothing like the iPhone 5, 5C, 5S. It was probably half or a third or whatever.
I mean, but take the top 3 selling. I take the top 3 selling Samsung. You got the the Note. You have the S3 or S4, and then whatever the third one is. I guarantee those numbers do not equal an iPhone sale.
And yet, Samsung, when you compare sales of those devices, of their smartphones rather, collectively, outsells Apple over 2-1.
Yeah.
So, whatever. I mean, Apple has decided that this Big Bang thing works for them. They do it once a year. It's like Hollywood blockbusters. That's what they do, and that's a big deal for them. And so you're going to read stories in a couple of weeks or in a month or 2 or whatever it is, where it's like, has Apple overtaken the smartphone crown? Because once a year they have this huge release thing, and it's like, oh my God, everyone's so excited about it. If they do, it's temporary, because Samsung keeps coming back with more. They're like the Terminator robot. The skin gets torn off.
Yeah.
You can see the exoskeleton thing, but he's not going to stop. That's Samsung, and so this is the story that has happened to Apple in the past. We keep telling this, but the difference this time is that it's not just Samsung, Apple. Well, no, I should say it is sort of just Samsung. Like, Android obviously collectively is hurting Apple, but it's sort of just Samsung, right? Isn't it? I mean, isn't Samsung pretty much?
It is Samsung, and I also, when you look at the Android market, you say like, oh well, it's dominating iOS, and iOS is getting their ass handed to them. Well, no, I don't think that's the case, because the people that are going into a store and getting those free Android phones, those people were never going to go and buy an iPhone. They weren't. I mean, it's a given. Those people were not going to go and buy an iPhone if they could get this for free. But I do think that the market is kind of going to shift. I don't think we're going to see these, 50%, 40% market shares. I think it's going to be smaller market shares, but kind of equal all across the board eventually. I think Android and iOS are going to kind of be neck and neck, and then whoever's number 3 is going to have 20% or 30% of the market.
Well, it depends on where you're looking. I mean, so in the United States, like the iPhone does amazing. Elsewhere in the world, no, not so much. And so it really depends. In China, the iPhone is a non-event. And that's what they're hoping to change with this release, although they didn't price it accordingly. So I guess we'll see.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, I guess I have 2 things I want to talk about. I have ordered a Lumia 520.
Yes.
After discussing it last week on the air, we spoke about how it was $99 unsubsidized. You could just go and buy it, and comes with a SIM card, and you could either hook it up and activate it, or you could use it like an MP3 player. I plan on using it like an MP3 player and playing around with the apps, because I feel like I'm missing out on Windows Phone. I miss Windows Phone. They took it away from me, Paul. They took Windows Phone away, and now I need it. So I've ordered it. I should have it within the next day. I was hoping I would have it today, but I don't. So I'll do like a little review of it next week. But I was playing around with the one that you have. I have to tell you, Paul, this, for whatever reason, because it's $99, and this says a lot about the way that we're conditioned to buy stuff. Because it's $99 unsubsidized, I imagine this thing was going to be slow, it's going to be sluggish, it's going to be a crappy version of the Lumia. It's really not. That's not the case.
No.
It's actually pretty fast. It's a smaller display, so you're not getting this gigantic display, but it's as good as any other Lumia device that I've used over the last year.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have the killer camera that you see in the high-end phones.
I mean, I'm talking about just functionality, just scrolling and playing around with the apps. I mean, you're getting a decent experience.
It runs that Halo game. It runs, God, I just forgot the name of it. The Asphalt 7, the racing game, fine. It has all of the media services, Rhapsody, Nokia Music, Pandora, Xbox Music, of course. Other things I'm forgetting. I'm sorry. Audible. Netflix works on it. It's such an amazing and versatile little device. Last week when I drove down to Rhode Island, I used it for my GPS.
Yeah.
I downloaded the maps, put it in offline mode. GPS still works. It's funny because it's small. I don't have a car holder in my car, for like a smartphone. And it's always a problem because you try to wedge it in certain places and they always fall down and it never really works. But in my wife's car, between the tachometer and the speedometer, there's this kind of space with a little display that's normally pretty useless. And that phone fits in there perfectly. And so it's right where you want to look. And it's got the GPS thing going. And it was great, and it's such a versatile and amazing device. And so on this trip to New York, I used it just to listen to music. But
and I bet you're going to get great battery life if you're not using the radio on that thing.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm excited to play around with it. Next week I'll have a review for you guys, and we'll play around with it. Also, let's talk about yesterday. We hung out a little bit. We had a little meetup. You made fun of me the entire time. We went to Mary Jo Foley's usual hangout spot, Rattle and Hub. It's over by the Empire State Building. Did I show the picture? Did I show the picture right when I went outside? Oh, with the flag in the building, yeah.
At some point yesterday, it was probably like 5:30 at night or something.
Did you post
I realized, it? No, no, I should have. I'd already put a picture of them. I should. I'll think about doing that. But I went outside to call my wife, and it's probably 5:30. It's still light out. But of course, you look. It's New York City, so what's like right up above me is the Empire State Building and all of its glory. It's beautiful. We have perfect blue sky, amazing. There's like the, kind of the awning of the building we're in, and it's got like an American flag in front of it and everything. And so I kind of looked up and I took a picture, and it's like, it's what I love about being in New York City, because it's like, it's just so amazing. But that place is great. They have a crazy beer selection, and not that Andrew could tell you anything about that because he was drinking. What did you call it?
Pinot Gris.
That cringe-inducing phrase.
We were drinking Pinot Gris, and I have to tell you,
out of a giant bottle.
It was a giant bottle. I drank that entire bottle.
Oh God!
Do you know how many glasses I had? I had 7 glasses of wine.
Yeah, this does not surprise me.
I was having a ball. I had a great time. I was enjoying the Pinot Gris. Everybody was staring at me because it's a beer place. But Paul I think at one point, Paul just wanted to punch me. Every time I said cheers, I'm going to enjoy my Pinot Grigio, and I would just see
I was like, you got to stop saying that. I'm like, I'll give you the drink, but you got to stop saying that.
It was so good. It was so good, Paul. You missed out. You missed out on some really good Pinot Grigio.
Oh, yeah. No, I had some really good beer, though.
But beforehand, Darren, one of our viewers, I met up with him before, and we went to this hole-in-the-wall. And I got a picture of it if you want to see what this place looked like.
Okay.
This was the bathroom.
Yes. Nice.
Look at this thing.
I go to a place in Colorado that has that exact same bathroom.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
I was terrified of getting...
You should go in there with a black light sometime. That would be like a horror movie.
Yeah. Well, I guarantee you people getting hepatitis in that place. It's awful. It was an awful hole in the wall. But, you know, New York City hole in the wall. What else are you going to do? And then I wanted to get a Pinot Grigio there, but I thought I would just get beaten when I asked for a Pinot Grigio. So, but it was a lot of fun. We met a lot of good people came by. A couple of people came by. And it was a small thing. Next time we should do like this big event, though. I feel like we're ready for it. It's time.
Yeah. I don't know what's happened with the trip stuff. I mean, it seemed like for many years there, I was going to New York all the time. And we started doing this podcast, and suddenly it dried up.
Yeah.
I mean, I love going to New York, and it's really easy on the train. It's such a great trip, and so much better than flying into anywhere. I mean, I love the whole experience.
Yeah, so it was fun. And then I drank at Trax in Penn Station. So after having like 7 glasses of wine, we made it over to Penn Station, and I met up with Kirk from This Week in Radio Tech, and I had like 3 drinks there. And after that, I don't remember anything. My wife picked me up.
So you went to Trax?
I did go to Trax, yeah.
Did you get oysters or anything over there?
I didn't, because they don't like oysters.
What?
They don't like oysters.
They don't like oysters?
Yeah, the people that I was with. I was with Kirk and a friend of his, but they don't like it. So I was so drunk. I was like, I'm just going to get a burger. And I ordered a burger.
Burger?
Again.
Wow.
Yeah, and then that was it. And I ended up
I had a train burger for dinner. It was a nicely microwaved hamburger. Yeah.
So that was my day, and today I'm kind of recovering.
Yeah, me too. I went to bed last night, and I think I passed out in 2 seconds. And then this morning, you can tell when you're sleeping properly because my wife actually had to wake me up this morning, which is really unusual.
So, but it was a lot of fun.
I usually launch out of bed pretty early, but
it was a lot of fun. So that was that. That was the event, and we hung out and we drank, and everybody made fun of me because I drank Pinot Grigio, but it's fine. I'm okay. I did get an interesting
All I'm saying is
email.
there was a lot of good beer occurring at this table, but just not for you.
Not for me.
Yeah.
The fruity one was really good. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah, the sour.
Yeah, I did get an email before we wrap it up, and I do want to say this is the funniest thing. So there was a viewer named Dan that came. He showed up.
Yeah,
and Dan, he wrote this really nice letter saying like, it was so nice to meet all of you. And at the end, he writes, like, it was nice to meet you, Andrew. But he starts, Andrew, you were exactly what I expected.
An effeminate wine-drinking snob.
That's exactly, he wrote, you were exactly what I expected. And that's pretty much what everybody says to me. So, I thought that was hysterical.
It's good.
Yeah. And, I could at least guarantee you that. I will enjoy my Pinot Grigio and like my
I will not
drinks.
disappoint you.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was fun. All right, Paul, time to wrap it up. You can go to our website, gfknetwork.com. If you miss any portion of the show, you could catch it archived there. We're on iTunes. We're on Windows Phone. We're everywhere podcasts are available. So please subscribe. It helps us out. Also, if you want to support the GFK Network, you want to help us out a little bit, we have an Amazon affiliate link on our website. If you're watching live, you can click on that Amazon link on the side, or you can go to gfq.co/Amazon. And we get a little credit. Also, if you're in the UK or in Canada, if you click on our little donate page, you have all these different links for our Amazon affiliate links for Canada and the UK. WinSuperside.com for all things Paul Thurrott. You can catch Paul on Windows Weekly every Thursday at 2 p.m. East with Mary Jo Foley and Leo Laporte. I think Ayaz is covering for next week or two, right?
Yep.
Another guy from Queens.
2 more weeks, yeah.
Ayaz Akhtar, another guy from Queens. And that's it, guys. So we'll see you all next week. Good night, everybody.